Italian, Italiano, or Lingua Italiana, Lingua Italiana, is a Romance language spoken mainly in Europe, Italy, Switzerland, San Marino, Vatican City, as a second language in Albania, Malta, Slovenia and Croatia, by minorities in Crimea, Eritrea, France, Libya, Monaco, Montenegro, Romania and Somalia, and by expatriate communities in Europe, in the Americas and in Australia. Many speakers are native bilinguals of both standardized Italian and other regional languages. According to the Bologna statistics of the European Union, Italian is spoken as a native language by 65 million people in the EU, mainly in Italy, and as a second language by 14 million, including the Italian speakers in non-EU European countries and on other continents. The total number of speakers is around 85 million. Italian has been reported as the fourth most frequently taught foreign language in the world, although this is disputed. In Switzerland, Italian is one of 4 official languages. It is studied and learned in all the Confederation schools and spoken, as a native language, in the Swiss cantons of Ticino and Graubünden and by the Italian immigrants that are present in large numbers in German and French-speaking cantons. It is also the official language of San Marino, as well as the primary language of the Vatican City. It is co-official in Slovenia and Istria and in Istria County in Croatia. The Italian language adopted by the state after the unification of Italy is based on Tuscan, which beforehand was a language spoken mostly by the upper class of Florentine society. Its development was also influenced by other Italian languages and by the Germanic languages of the post-Roman invaders. Italian is descended from Latin. Unlike most other Romance languages, Italian retains Latin's contrast between short and long consonants. As in most Romance languages, stress is distinctive. Among the Romance languages, Italian is the closest to Latin in terms of vocabulary. History. Origins. The standard Italian language has a poetic and literary origin in the writings of Tuscan writers of the 12th century, and, even though the grammar and core lexicon are basically unchanged from those used in Florence in the 13th century, the modern standard of the language was largely shaped by relatively recent events. However, Italian as a language used in Italy and some surrounding regions has a longer history. In fact, the earliest surviving texts that can definitely be called Italian are legal formulae known as the Placiti Cassinasi from the province of Benevento that date from 960 to 963, although the Veronese riddle contains a late form of Vulgar Latin that can be seen as a very early Italian dialect. What would come to be thought of as Italian was first formalized in the early 14th century through the works of Tuscan writer Dante Alighieri, written in his native Florentine. Dante's epic poems, known collectively as the Commedia, to which another Tuscan poet Giovanni Boccaccio later affixed the title Divina, were read throughout Italy, and his written dialect became the canonical standard that all educated Italians could understand. Dante is still credited with standardizing the Italian language, and thus the dialect of Florence became the basis for what would become the official language of Italy. Italian often was an official language of the various Italian states predating unification, slowly usurping Latin, even when ruled by foreign powers, even though the masses spoke primarily vernacular languages and dialects. Italian was also one of the many recognized languages in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Italy has always had a distinctive dialect for each city, because the cities, until recently, were thought of as city-states. Those dialects now have considerable variety. As Tuscan-derived Italian came to be used throughout Italy, features of local speech were naturally adopted, producing various versions of regional Italian. The most characteristic differences, for instance, between Roman Italian and Milanese Italian are the gemination of initial consonants and the pronunciation of stress e and of s in some cases, e.g., Virginia bene, all right, is pronounced Virginia Bene by a Roman, Virginia Bene by a Milanese. A casa, at home, is a KSR for Roman and standard, a casa for Milanese and generally northern. In contrast to the Gallo-Italic languages of northern Italy, the Italo-Dalmatian Neapolitan language and its dialects were largely unaffected by the Franco-Occitan influences introduced to Italy, mainly by bards from France, during the Middle Ages, but, after the Norman conquest of southern Italy, Sicily became the first Italian land to adopt Occitan lyric moods in poetry. Even in the case of northern Italian languages, however, scholars are careful not to overstate the effects of outsiders on the natural indigenous developments of the languages. The economic might and relatively advanced development of Tuscany at the time gave its language weight. Though the Venetian language remained widespread in medieval Italian commercial life, and Ligurian remained in use in maritime trade alongside the Mediterranean, the increasing political and cultural relevance of Florence during the periods of the rise of the Banco Medici, humanism, and the Renaissance made its dialect, or rather a refined version of it, a standard in the arts. Renaissance. Starting with the Renaissance, Italian became the language used in the courts of every state in the peninsula. The rediscovery of Dante's De Vulgari Eloquentia and a renewed interest in linguistics in the 16th century sparked a debate that raged throughout Italy concerning the criteria that should govern the establishment of a modern Italian literary and spoken language. Scholars divided into three factions. The Purists, headed by Venetian Pietro Bembo. The Purists thought the Divine Comedy not dignified enough because it used elements from non-lyric registers of the language. Niccolò Machiavelli and other Florentines preferred the version spoken by ordinary people in their own times. The courtiers, like Baldassare Castiglione and Gian Giorgio Trissino, insisted that each local vernacular contribute to the new standard. A fourth faction claimed the best Italian was the one that the papal court adopted, which was a mix of Florentine and the dialect of Rome. Eventually, Bembo's ideas prevailed, and the foundation of the Accademia della Crusca in Florence, the official legislative body of the Italian language, led to publication of Agnolo Monodini's Latin tome Floris Italici Lingua Libri Novem in 1604, followed by the first Italian dictionary in 1612. Modern era. An important event that helped the diffusion of Italian was the conquest and occupation of Italy by Napoleon in the early 19th century. This conquest propelled the unification of Italy some decades after, and pushed the Italian language into a lingua franca used not only among clerks, nobility and functionaries in the Italian courts but also in the bourgeoisie. Contemporary times. Italian literature's first modern novel, I Promessi Sposi, by Alessandro Manzoni, further defined the standard by rinsing his Milanese in the waters of the Arno, as he states in the preface to his 1840 edition. After unification, a huge number of civil servants and soldiers recruited from all over the country introduced many more words and idioms from their home languages. Paniton comes from Lombard word paniton, etc. Only 2.5% of Italy's population could speak the Italian standardized language properly when the nation unified in 1861, centered mainly in northwestern Italy. Classification. Italian is a Romance language, and is therefore a descendant of Vulgar Latin. Standard Italian is based on Tuscan, especially its Florentine dialect, and is therefore an Italo-Dalmatian language, to which Sicilian and the extinct Dalmatian also belong, among the few others. Unlike most other Romance languages, Italian retains Latin's contrast between short and long consonants. As in most Romance languages, stress is distinctive. In particular, among the Romance languages, Italian is the closest to Latin in terms of vocabulary. Lexical similarity is 89% with French, 88% with Catalan, 85% with Sardinian, 82% with Spanish and Portuguese, 78% with Rhaetia Romance. and 77% with Romanian. One study analyzing the degree of differentiation of Romance languages in comparison to Latin estimated that among the languages analyzed, the distance between Italian and Latin is only higher than that between Sardinian and Latin. Geographic distribution. Europe. Italian is the official language of Italy and San Marino and is spoken fluently by the majority of the country's populations. Italian is official, together with French, German and Romansh in Switzerland, with most of the 0.5 million speakers concentrated in the south of the country, in the cantons of Ticino and southern Graubünden. Italian is the third most spoken language in Switzerland, and its use has modestly declined since the 1970s. Italian is also used in administration and official documents in Vatican City. Italian is widely spoken in Malta, where nearly two-thirds of the population can speak it fluently. Italian served as Malta's official language until 1934, while it is also recognized as an official language in Istria County, Croatia and Slovenia. In Istria, where there are significant and historic Italian populations, it is used as the official language of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, a Roman Catholic chivalric order which, while not a nation per se, is still recognized as a sovereign subject of international law. Italian is also spoken by a minority in Monaco and France. Africa. Due to heavy Italian influence during the Italian colonial period, Italian is still understood by some in Libya and Eritrea. Although it was the primary language since colonial rule, Italian greatly declined under the rule of Muammar Gaddafi, who expelled the Italian Libyan population and made Arabic the sole official language of the country. Nevertheless, Italian is sometimes used in economic sectors in Libya. In Eritrea, Italian is at times used in commerce, and the capital city Asmara still has one Italian language school. Italian was also introduced to Somalia through colonialism and was the sole official language of administration and education during the colonial period, but fell out of use after government, educational and economic infrastructure were destroyed in the Somali Civil War. Italian is still understood by some elderly and the educated people. The official languages of the Somali Republic are Somali and Arabic. The second languages of the transitional federal government are English. Immigrant communities. Although over 17 million Americans are of Italian descent, only a little over 1 million people in the United States speak Italian at home. Nevertheless, an Italian language media market does exist in the country. In Canada, Italian is the second most spoken non-official language when varieties of Chinese are not grouped together, with over 660,000 speakers according to the 2006 census. In Australia, Italian is the second most spoken foreign language after Chinese, with 1.4% of the population speaking it as their home language. Italian immigrants to South America have also brought a presence of the language to that continent. Italian is the second most spoken language in Argentina after the official language of Spanish, with over 1 million speaking it at home. And Italian has also influenced the dialect of Spanish spoken in Argentina and Uruguay, mostly in phonology, as well as the Portuguese prosody of the Brazilian state of São Paulo, which itself has 15 million Italian descendants. This form of Spanish is known as Rio Platense Spanish. Italian bilingual speakers can be found in the southeast of Brazil as well as in the south. The Venetian language, specifically the Veneto-Italian dialect, is spoken by over 700,000 people in the southern states. In 2009, the Brazilian city of Serafina, Korea, in the state of Rio Grande do Sul, gave Italian joint official status, alongside Portuguese. Smaller Italian-speaking minorities on the continent are also found in Venezuela, Paraguay and Ecuador. Education. Italian is widely taught in many schools around the world, but rarely as the first foreign language. In fact, Italian is considered the fourth most frequently taught foreign language in the world, according to the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Every year there are more than 200,000 foreign students who study the Italian language. They are distributed among the 90 institutes of Italian culture that are located around the world, or in the 179 Italian schools located abroad, or in the 111 Italian lecturer sections belonging to foreign schools where Italian is taught as a language of culture. In the United States, Italian is the fourth most taught foreign language after Spanish, French and German, in that order. In Central East Europe, Italian is first in Montenegro, second in Austria, Croatia, Slovenia, and Ukraine after English, and third in Hungary, Romania and Russia after English and German. But throughout the world, Italian is the fifth most taught foreign language, after English, French, German, and Spanish. In the European Union statistics, Italian is spoken as a native language by 13% of the EU population, or 65 million people, mainly in Italy. In the EU, it is spoken as a second language by 3% of the EU population, or 14 million people. Among EU states, the percentage of people able to speak Italian well enough to have a conversation is 66% in Malta, 15% in Slovenia, 14% in Croatia, 8% in Austria, 5% in France and Luxembourg, and 4% in the former West Germany, Greece, Cyprus, and Romania. Italian is also one of the national languages of Switzerland, which is not a part of the European Union. The Italian language is well known and studied in Albania, another non-EU member, due to its historical ties and geographical proximity to Italy and to the diffusion of Italian television in the country. Influence and derived languages. From the late 19th to the mid-20th century, thousands of Italians settled in Argentina, Uruguay, southern Brazil, and Venezuela, where they formed a physical and cultural presence. In some cases, colonies were established where variants of regional languages of Italy were used, and some continue to use this regional language. Examples are Rio Grande do Sul, Brazil, where Italian is used, and the town of Chipolo near Puebla, Mexico. Each continues to use a derived form of Venetian dating back to the 19th century. Another example is cocoliche, an Italian-Spanish pidgin once spoken in Argentina and especially in Buenos Aires, and lunfardo, Rio Platense Spanish, and particularly the speech of the city of Buenos Aires, has intonation patterns that resemble those of Italian languages. Because Argentina has had a continuous large influx of Italian settlers since the second half of the 19th century. Initially primarily from northern Italy, then, since the beginning of the 20th century, mostly from southern Italy. Lingua franca starting in late medieval times in much of Europe and the Mediterranean. Latin was replaced as the primary commercial language by Italian language variants. These variants were consolidated during the Renaissance with the strength of Italy and the rise of humanism and the arts. During that period, Italy held artistic sway over the rest of Europe. It was the norm for all educated gentlemen to make the grand tour, visiting Italy to see its great historical monuments and works of art. It thus became expected to learn at least some Italian. In England, while the classical languages Latin and Greek were the first to be learned, Italian became the second most common modern language after French, a position it held until the late 18th century, when it tended to be replaced by German. John Milton, for instance, wrote some of his early poetry in Italian. Within the Catholic Church, Italian is known by a large part of the ecclesiastical hierarchy, and is used in substitution for Latin in some official documents. The primacy of Italian as a language in the Vatican City indicates use, not only within the Holy See, but throughout the world wherever an episcopal seat is present. Italian loanwords continue to be used in most languages in matters of art and music, in the design and fashion industries, and in some sports, and especially culinary terms. Dialects. Throughout Italy, regional variations of Standard Italian, called Regional Italian, are spoken. In Italy, almost all Romance languages spoken as the vernacular, other than Standard Italian and distantly related, non-Romance languages spoken in border regions or among immigrant communities, are often imprecisely called Italian dialects, even though they are quite different, with some belong to different branches of the Romance language family. The only exceptions to this are Sardinian, Leyden, and Friulan, which the law recognizes as official regional languages. The Corsican language is also related to Italian. Regional differences can be recognized by various factors: the openness of vowels, the length of the consonants, and influence of the local language.